Welcome, everybody. We'll wait just a minute or so as everyone comes in, as you come on into the group. Okay. I know that we'll have people joining as we go along, as some people are always on Shelter Island time, which is just always about 5 to 10 minutes late. So I think we can probably, still have people coming in. Okay. We'll wait another minute or so. Okay, it looks like our initial group is in. Welcome, everybody. I'm Terry Lucas. I'm the director of the Shelter Island Public Library, and I'm thrilled that you're here tonight for the Richard Varney Memorial Poetry Reading. I believe this is our 4th annual. Am I correct, Virginia?
Yes, it is. Yes.
This is a webinar, so we won't see your faces. You'll see our faces, but we won't see your faces. If you have any technical difficulties, put it in the chat. I will monitor the chat. If you have questions, put them in the Q&A and we will get to them at the end. And without any further ado, please let me introduce Virginia Walker. And Virginia taught English at colleges in New England and on Long Island. And in recent years, she's curated poetry programs for the Shelter Island Library. She also served as a facilitator of the Art Rich Poetry Roundtable at the Shelter Island Library from 2018 to 2020. And with that, I will turn it over to Virginia.
Well, thank you, Terry, and thank you for helping us to create this webinar. And you and Jocelyn did so much to make it possible. I have 3 wonderful guests tonight to help us in this memorial reading. And I'm just going to mention their names now, and then when it's their turn to read, I will say more about them. First, I have Kathaleen Donnelly, and I think you can see her there. And she edited a magnificent poetry book called Pominoke Transition, which, by the way, I just gave as a donation to the Richard Varney Poetry Collection at the Shelter Island Library. You see, it's a massive volume, and it's filled with poetry by Long Island poets and photographs to match that poetry by Long Island photographers. And I'm very happy to say that Kathaleen not only included current poets and photographers in this book, but she also included famous Long Island poets like Walt Whitman, and also some close to us who are not with us anymore, such as my friend Michael Walsh. So it was a wonderful book that Kathaleen did. And I'll tell you more about her when we come to her later. My second guest is Daniel Kerr, who is a pastor of All Souls Episcopal Church in Stony Brook. He also, somehow he has so many hats. He's also a CPA and a professor of accounting at a number of colleges. And our third guest is Robert Savino, who was a former poet laureate of Suffolk County from 2015 to 2017. Now, the program tonight is going to be in 2 parts. First, we will hear from our poets, and I'll be included in that. And we're going to each read 8 minutes of our own poetry. And contrary to the article, that wonderful article in the Reporter, we're not going to read just from Pominoke Transition. We'll be reading our poetry from wherever it was published, or maybe something brand new. And then I will tell you a little bit about Richard Varney, because I knew him and thought he was a dear human being. I'll tell you a little bit about him and how the collection got established. And then we're going to return to our poets in alphabetical order, and they will read for 7 minutes each from poetry in the Varney collection, the Richard Varney collection. And we'll have to find out who they are as poets first, and then we'll be interested, I think, in their choices, what they choose to read from the collection. So without further ado, I'm going to turn to Kathaleen Donnelly and tell you something more about her. She went to St. Vincent's College, and she is a cardiology nurse and a practitioner at Stony Brook Hospital. And she edited this volume and others. This is the third in a trilogy of Pominoke books. And she's been published in Songs of Seasoned Women. I like these titles.
Mhm.
Oberon, A Taste of Poetry. And this title really lures me. The Seventh Quarry in Wales. I'll have to learn more about that book. That's really interesting. And she is very sensitive and alert to human abilities and frailties, and an amazing person, a human being. And Kathy, I'll call you Kathy if you don't mind. Would you take over and
Okay,
read?
so we start with my own. All
Sure,
right.
your own, yes.
Yeah.
I want them to get to know you, and then we'll see how you make your choices. Yeah.
Okay. Virginia, first of all, I want to thank you so very much for this opportunity. It's amazing. And Terry, thank you for putting this together. So I did put a handful of poems together, and I timed it because, we had a limit of time. So I'm
But I
hoping.
make terrible threats too.
So I think that if I go over, because I read a little differently than when I read it, myself, maybe just like clap your hands and I'll wind it up.
Yes, yes.
Fair enough?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so I'll start with this poem called A Poem for Today. To wake at 7 a.m. on the clock is a compliment. My body, still alive, drifts back to the pleasure of rest, conscious without dreams. My bed surrounded with books, paper clippings, words sink into my synapses at their own pace. How many neurons are there before information has nowhere to go? Then all I will have left is what I have known. That would not be good. I embrace the lazy morning of which there are too few. Let the day take me. On my kitchen table, hot plate, filtered water for coffee's substitute, Roma, a dash of rice milk, Trader Joe's pumpkin pancakes, grapeseed oil rather than melted butter, 2 eggs instead of 3. I should live a long, healthy life. It is the maple syrup that fills me with regret. Maybe not so long. Today will be different than all the others. I say this at 7 a.m. The next poem is called Lost in Autumn, and it's sort of like 4 almost haikus. And it goes like this. Dry leaves crackle underfoot in a forest of fallen songs. Morning rain brightens tired browns in a puddle of spoken words. Gray clouds hover overhead in a sky of remembered dreams. Misty drizzle lingers midair in a sea of thoughts undone. So this next poem is an experience I had, and I decided to turn it into something a little whimsical. It's called Spring Cleaning. It was to a family member. That's all I'll give you. When you said you were coming to visit, I noticed the cobwebs in every corner. So took down every domicile of my quiet 8-legged tenants. Because you said you were coming, I found the clothesline to hang linens, laundered towels, fluffed pillows, vacuumed, washed dishes, contented where they were piled. So excited was I that you were coming. I put the books back on the bookshelf, piled papers, dusted lampshades, then with a soft cotton cloth, wiped family photos you'd wish to see. When you called and said you were not coming, I was not sorry to have done a spring cleaning. Perhaps you should tell me to expect you around this time each year. And to change the mood altogether, I envisioned a woman in Belterre. Belterre is sort of more richer area of Port Jefferson. It's a big jetty into the Long Island Sound. She put down her ink pen, pushed away her paper, stood up from her soft cushioned chair that had come to fit, reached up to lift her coat and scarf draped over an open door, buttoned up to brace crisp air, unable to think of anything but you. Down a dirt path through woods, bare oak boughs, her steps shuffled damp yellow leaves, crunched acorn tops robbed of their seed. She could not bother to step around, only thoughts of you. Reaching the edge of cliff overlooking the sound, she walked with one foot threatening to tip her down the sand dune to the sea. Waves crashed and withdrew to crash again, as they did when you were there beside her. Salt water claimed the air, wet sand the shore, seagulls the sky, but she claimed that time, that very thing you had so little of, to spend with thoughts of you. This next poem is called An Admission, and it's in my mind, it was a man talking to his wife. And he says to her, I admit I heard you tell me everything you wanted to say, but the wind rustling in a great white oak, where a robin fought the draft, made rust-colored leaves rain across an open grassy meadow, pointing the way all things not stationary would blow, all the while you told me what you wanted me to hear. I imagined being one of those leaves, or the robin's red-breasted feather loosened in the inrush of current, floating without care or concern, while you talked in past tenses what I should have known. I wondered if I might land softly as my updraft robin in her nest, in my home, be stationary with you and talk in present tense. Relationships, right? Here's another. Impossible. I left a soft cushioned chair in the hall for you to sit. You chose the stoop and left the hall empty. I left a hot leek soup on the stove for you to eat. You decided this day was a good day to fast. I opened the heavy wooden door to the house for you to walk through. That moment apparently was a good time to stroll. I asked you to be here when I got home to keep you safe and sound. You left for a private place, and now I cannot find you. So this poem is another anecdotal poem because my mother discovered when she was in her 50s, quite by accident, that she was adopted. It set her crying, but I assured her it was a very interesting thing to learn. And so the poem is called Dear Grandmother. We never met. Who were you? Does your soul hover above or around? Who are you? I talk of your 17-year-old experience in a sentence, pregnant in 1930. The word slipped from my tongue as if it were less than a tragedy and must have colored your entire being, all the days that you breathed, every waking moment, every minute of sleep. When did you notice your body changing from a girl's to a mother's? Was the child growing in your belly by consent or not? Did you know whose seed was planted, father to my mother? How did you feel about being sent away? How did it go when you returned? Did our Catholic Church consider you wayward or naive? How did it feel to give your child away? Did you watch her grow from a distance or try to forget? Did you learn her name? Did you name her or hold her, feed her, love her for a while, want to keep her, raise her on your own? Did this secret quiver inside of you, yearn to be set free? Why did you not marry 17-year-old in 1930? Too bad you could not see into the future. See how forgiving your child and grandchildren would be. How the mores of the times would change about being pregnant at 17. I would have liked to have known you. This is a poem about winter, winter's song. A winter's night song doesn't carry. It ends shortly after leaving your throat. It lingers in moist breath, visible in cold air, precipitates onto snow-covered lawns. Your voice echoes through tree limbs, sleeping the season through, bouncing off snow piles shoveled to the side of roads. Your lungs fill with crisp air, long to exhale autumn into spring, a melody to warm us deep down where our perceptions lie. So I read that poem on a 90-degree day, it seems.
I know, it's surprising. I'm sorry, for a while, I forgot to turn off my mic. I hope I
Oh, no.
didn't, yeah.
No
Uh,
problem.
well, I thank you. That was lovely, Kathy. And I especially was taken with that puddle of spoken words and so many of your lines. And I love when you dusted the lampshades. Who does that unless in desperation to impress somebody? It was a wonderful poem. I adore. And of course, your very serious poem about your mother. And that was just beautiful and taking us back through time and mores. And having grown up in the Catholic Church, I understood exactly some of the references there. It really was wonderful, wonderful reading. Now I'm going to have to ask you, how did you come to the idea of doing this beautiful book, Pominoke Transition? What prompted you to do this? Did the muse visit one night, or did you have wine on the beach? What happened?
This is going back a long time, maybe 20 years, but I had sold my home to my tenants, an Orthodox Lubavitcher Hasidic Jewish family who now have 10 children, and very interesting family. Anyway, I needed a place to live, and I wound up finding space in a woman's house who was a poet writer, Claire Nicholas White, and she invited me into her world. And then I met another great woman who'd be 102 years old if she was still alive right now, named Lynn Cosma, who became a mentor to me. And I just found myself loving reading poetry. That led to me writing, and with great encouragement from these two women in my life. So I thought about adding poetry to a book that I had already thought about, which is a book of photographs, because I belonged to a group called PFLI, and PFLI is a collection of about 22 groups of people that are camera clubs, and I belong to the Sweetbriar Camera Club, where I saw the most beautiful photographs that I knew were never going to be seen by anybody except family.
Because I guess these were normally amateur photographers, right?
Yeah, they were amateur photographers, but they were.
You did a wonderful service to not only the poets of Long Island, but the photographers, because I was at that big reading you did up at the Walt Whitman House, and everyone was thrilled. And we must move on right now to Daniel Kerr, who is, I'm going to read him a little bit about him, because he is both a PhD and a CPA. Think about that, hats. All right. And but to crown his accomplishments, he is a pastor at the All Souls Episcopal Church in Stony Brook, and he's focused on helping people and organizations be more inclusive. He has wonderful ecumenical outreaches, and I know you're going to talk about one of them momentarily. And his poetry has been in Beat Generation, Corona Poetry Collaboration, and Performance Poets. And he writes about religion, politics, history, and his own life. And he has a wicked sense of humor. I hope we see a little bit of that tonight. And Dan, tell me about this second Saturday thing that happens at All Souls Church.
I'm reading with two poets who have been an inspiration to me. Robert Savino is the poet laureate, and Kathy is actually the one who started the program at All Souls. So we do a poetry the second Saturday of every month. You can set your watch, second Saturday, and it's always at 11 a.m. and it's on Zoom. And we'll have Melissa Fadul will be our reader. And we were fortunate to have you, Virginia, as a reader, and Kathy only gets top-notch talent as readers. And we have the featured reader, and then we also have the open read as well. And it's not unusual that we have 20 people that show up and read their works. So next one is July 9th. You can access it through the All Souls Stony Brook website.
Well, I'd like to hear some of your own poetry, Dan.
Sure.
And you have 8 minutes to do whatever you want.
Okay. I'm from New York, so I can speak fast. So I've selected two poems for today. A lot of my poetry has to do with what it was like as a kid growing up on Long Island in the 1960s. And Robert, I picked one of your favorites of my poems. I grew up in Northport, or Ashokan, where the nearest town was Northport. And this poem is called Jack Kerouac and the Nuns of Northport. And it describes me growing up. Northport of the 1960s had Gunther's Bar and St. Philip Neri Church and School. From his bar stool at Gunther's, Jack Kerouac guided the beatniks. From their perch overlooking Northport Village, the nuns of St. Philip's guided me. Bob Dylan sang "The Times They Are A-Changing," and they did, for the nuns, for me, for the Catholic Church, for our country, and the world as well. The nuns got me at 6. I arrived wearing a big white tag with my name, phone number, and address. The kids were all in uniform, and the nuns were all dressed as penguins. When Mother Superior blew her whistle in Northport, Pope John opened Vatican II in Rome. As I learned to hide under my desk to avoid nuclear bombs, Rachel Carson published Silent Spring. The Mass was in Latin, and I learned about purgatory and hell. Martin Luther King shared his dream, and many dreams died in Dallas. Pope John declared the Jews did not kill Christ, and I received my first communion. The Beatles invaded the US, and Nelson Mandela was banished to Robbins Island. The Mass changed from Latin to English, and the priest began to face the congregation for the first time. Miniskirts first appeared, and Malcolm X disappeared. I received my first communion, and Vatican II said we should study the Bible. Mao launched his Cultural Revolution, and Star Trek boldly went where no man had gone before. I discovered girls and an occasional tightness in my pants. Christian Barnard transplanted a human heart, and Israel put a stake in the heart of the Arab world. I became an altar boy, and my brother volunteered to go fight in Vietnam. Martin Luther King was killed in Memphis, and the Tet Offensive killed the US in Vietnam. Russian tanks rolled into Czechoslovakia and crushed the Prague Spring. I heard a nun curse the day Nixon was declared the victor over Humphrey. Some nuns changed their habits, showed their hair, and began using the name their parents gave them. Many of the older nuns, however, remained the same. As the country divided, so did the nuns. I discovered booze and dreamed of going to Gunther's for a drink. Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, and Teddy Kennedy drowned both Mary Jo and the dreams of another Kennedy in the White House. I discovered Che Guevara, Jerry Rubin, Saul Alinsky, and Arlo Guthrie, and my brother was dragged to Vietnam for a second tour. On my religion midterm exam, I explained how Joe Namath was like Christ, and the New Testament New York Jets defeated the Old Testament Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III. Hare signaled the age of Aquarius, and Jack Kerouac died. Before he died, Jack declared, "I'm not a beatnik, I'm a Catholic." In the 8th grade, we celebrated the first Earth Day, and the loud guns of Kent State killed the 1960s. The day after the shooting, we gathered in prayer at the beginning of math class. Sister Eleanor, the math teacher, kept her old habit and never changed her name. She asked if we had any prayer intentions, and I raised my hand. I said, "For the young students gunned down by the fascist National Guard, we pray to the Lord." And we all said amen. After we said amen, Sister Eleanor responded, "For the brave National Guardsmen defending this country against the evil of communism, we pray to the Lord." And we all said amen. Bob Dylan was right. The times they were a-changing. The 1960s changed me, the nuns, the Catholic Church, and the country, and the world. 50 years gone by, I thank the nuns of Northport for guiding me through the changes. I often hear their voices in my head and in my heart, especially when I stop into Gunther's for a beer. If you close your eyes in Gunther's and listen carefully, you can hear Jack Kerouac's voice at Gunther's as well. He shared Northport with the nuns of St. Philip's in the 1960s. So that's the first of the two. I had a very interesting upbringing. I was the youngest of 8 kids, but I was actually raised by a woman from Bermuda. And she was an inspiration to me. And the title will make more sense as the poem goes on. The poem is called Bermuda Potatoes. I was the straw that broke my mother's back. A big house in Huntington Bay and 8 kids was too much for my mom to handle. Elvira left her family and the soft apartheid of 1950s Bermuda to change my diapers and cook and clean for a large family on the North Shore of Long Island. She arrived in the US as an immigrant with little education and went on to complete high school, become a US citizen, graduate from college, and become an administrator at Stony Brook University. One day long ago at dinner, I refused as a kid to eat my potatoes. Aunt Elvira told me firmly, Daniel, these are not just potatoes, they are Bermuda potatoes. From that point on, she only served Bermuda potatoes. Elvira introduced me to Aesop's fables and the wisdom of the Bible as she understood it. You don't have to like your brothers and sisters, you just have to love them. She said, your mother named you Daniel. Always have the courage of Daniel in the Bible to speak truth to power. Although she was very Black, it never occurred to me as a child that Elvira was not my mother's sister. The realities of race and racism were learned outside my home, and I began to refer to Elvira as my Black aunt. During the summers, she often teased my sisters. She said to them, no matter how much time you guys spend in the sun, I'll always have a better tan than you. Whenever turkey was served for dinner, she always said, you know, the dark meat is much more flavorful than that white stuff. Later in life, Elvira introduced me to her friends and families. She said, this is Daniel. He's the white sheep of the family. Although Elvira was loved at home, she was not exempt from the long arm of racism on Long Island. She left my parents' employ when I was 6, but returned to live with us when she could not find an apartment. She said, I called the number in the paper to confirm the apartment was still available. When I arrived to meet the landlord, he said the apartment was no longer available. Her British accent always opened the door, and her Black skin slammed the door in her face. Whenever I hear people say white privilege is a myth, I think of pain suffered by my Aunt Elvira. In Bermuda, they have a tradition when someone dies. The person closest to the deceased reads their biography at their funeral. When her family asked me to perform this task, they reminded me I was to read only what was written. Follow the script, they said, follow the script. And at the church in Hamilton, the capital of Bermuda, I followed the script until I came to the last line. She came to America for a better life, the bio said. I added, and made America a better place for everyone that she touched. After her funeral, the family gave me a picture. I'm looking at it now. It's a young Elvira looking at me with a big smile on her face. A few weeks ago, I changed the picture frame, and I discovered why she was smiling so broadly. I recognized her handwriting on the back of the picture, and it said, Elvira Vanderpool became a U.S. citizen February 2nd, 1962, Riverhead, New York. Thank you.
Oh, Daniel, thank you for that wonderful reading. I'm not sure you're done. Are you finished? I don't want to cut you off. Oh, that was wonderful. That first poem is like a kaleidoscope of the 60s. Oh my goodness, it was wonderful. And I was thinking that wonderful poem, the Jack Kerouac. I mean, the whole poem has a Jack Kerouac quality. And the Penguin Nuns. I mean, I'm sorry, that line cracked me up because I was raised in the church, and I had an aunt who was a nun, and we went to school, Immaculate Conception Grammar School in Jamaica, New York, and all the nuns dressed that way. So I know, and of course, all the changes. And I had so many friends go in the convent and then come out. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I also really loved what you did at the end when you went all the way to the funeral in Hamilton, Bermuda. I mean, that talk about dedication and such a long trip, and then that wonderful ending. It was so uplifting. And the fact that she, came here with not much and became an administrator. I mean, that's a remarkable journey, isn't it?
She was an inspiration, still is.
Yeah. Did she die fairly young though?
She and my mother died the same year.
Oh,
So
okay.
they were very
I
close.
wasn't sure, but it was a wonderful. You have told us so many stories. I almost don't know. I have to now go to someone else though, if you don't mind, Dan. I'm
That's
moving
fine.
on. I'm moving on to Robert. And Robert, you're there.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I want to tell you a little bit about Robert Savino. You may have seen him before because he was here. We were discussing the role of the poet today. And Robert Savino was a former Suffolk County Poet Laureate from 2015 to 2017. And he is a mentor of many young poets. And he's the editor of a bilingual collection of Long Island Italian-American poets. And he has the best titles of his poetry book. Listen to this one: Fireballs of an Illuminated Scarecrow. You've got to buy it. Fireballs of an Illuminated Scarecrow. What the hell is in that book? Excuse me. And he has a wonderful title and a book I do own, Inside a Turtle Shell. And his poetry celebrates nature, family, and writing itself. And I have to ask you, Robert, since you were the poet laureate, how have you kept active in poetry circles on Long Island, in addition to the anthology? I know you've been doing things.
Well, in addition to that, you always continue doing readings when you can, still writing as much as you can. I had the opportunity to do some judging for the first Greg Nussbaum and Walt Whitman Birthplace Scholarship, where I judged with Cornelius Eady and Molly Peacock, which was relatively thrilling. And also the first Suffolk County Teen Poet Laureate that came from Richard Bronson's project this year. So I feel that I'm keeping engaged with the young poets, and that works for me.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. And I know I got an announcement about that Teen Poet Laureate, and you were with very good judges there. And
Yes.
I'm sure that was an honor for you too. Well, I would like to hear poetry from you, and
Okay.
8 minutes you have.
Yeah, I want to thank you first, and I want to thank Terry for being our technical support. And I'm going to start with a poem that was my last interview before retirement. The interview. He wants to know more about me beyond the employment history on my resume, but I tell him I can't tell him much. It's recommended I don't divulge that information to protect you from discriminating against me, which would make us a prejudiced society. However, in the effort of reasonable disclosure, I will tell you this. I was born in the year Babe Ruth died, when Citation won the Triple Crown, when the state of Israel was created and New York Idlewild Airport opened. A gallon of gas was 16 cents, a gallon of milk was 87 cents, and my father could buy a house for $7 grand. I served as an altar boy when Sputnik was launched, and though blessed, drank wine inferior to what my grandfather made with his hands and feet in the province of Chieti. I served our country when Sergeant Pepper debuted and Ho Chi Minh refused to stop infiltration. I looked into the reflection of his startled eyes. Pinstripes gone, and I'm sitting in my birthday suit, scales running up and down my back, my nose smoking, exhaling flames, and tail oscillating. He praises my qualifications, promises to contact me in 2 weeks, and I wait in a dust collection of resumes. The second one I'm going to read from the book is The Last Drop of Wine, which is the last day that I spent with my father. Last drop of wine. It hurt me to see the lifetime of running down, you holding on, not letting go, me holding on to you. Tangerine skies fade to ashen, return slower each time it rains. Raindrops we never allowed, and they take longer to run down the bridge of your nose than mine. I came to drink wine like we always do, talk about the Yankees and argue about the best player. You'd say Joe D, and I'd say the Mick. We laugh hard over those years, afloat in that bottle. And when it comes lighter, my fingers dance erratically. You reach over and clench my wrist, try to squeeze out every last memory. The next one I'll read from the book is a Long Island poem, a little bit of the past, present, and possible projection of the future, and it's titled Ghostland. Eden, long forgotten, the poet's almanac evolves as paradise, reshaped by the activity of angry elements and continental collision. Glacier chunks penetrate the terrain, melting to lakes Ronkonkoma and Success. 13 tribes of Indians become the Adam and Eve, carving out from their dreams a medicine wheel of nations, ceremonial to this turtle island, until the Dutch take claim to the land they call Lang Island, and the fish transforms to and through the legacy of Robert Moses, progress to paradise lost. Threads of memories are swallowed in tasteless mouthfuls by the sea. The fish swims in and out of a skull's eye sockets, the sky above moving water. Next three I'll read are, one is new, some is a little bit older, but they all reflect the times we're living in now. Aftershock. Where were you for the May 4th massacre in socially conscientious 1970? 67 rounds left one collegiate kneeling, a bullet-ridden body in her arms. Were you ready for war or the Peace Corps? Where were you for the September 2001 attack? Backpacking bombers tumble the Twin Towers, dead eyes beneath black clouds and crumble. Were you there, searching or home weeping? Where were you for 2003 evasion? Bombs across Baghdad, an upside down yellow cake uranium surprise, topped with crumbs of Hussein. Were you a Bush and Blair believer? Even before my time, Enola Gray dropped Little Boy on Hiroshima and Boxcar dropped Fat Man on Nagasaki. Now, our children are exposed to Ukraine. Optimism becomes the lump in each new swallow, the bitter taste I'm expected to forget. Yet candlelight eyes radiate hope from everywhere, rekindle souls and lamps between darkness and the dark. Where will the spinning globe stop next? Where will you be when it does? The next one I wrote a while ago, but it's kind of fitting now with all the stuff going around with guns in schools. Son of a gun. Children circle the swimming pool. Plastic pistols filled with water, handle to barrel. Each squirt aims to soak an opponent. Dad laughs as he takes a stream between the eyes. He says, "Nice shot, son." No surprise when Dad takes his 12-year-old hunting, teaches the boy how to operate a pellet pistol, pick off squirrels and chipmunks while he goes after big game with a big gun, a rapid fire trigger, angrier after each missed kill, bullet shells ejecting high into a gunpowder breeze. The son learns well, a marksman in manhood, a better shot than Dad. Now, a dad himself, a pearl-handled pistol, full clip in the handle, child in a belligerent barrel. This last one is about my life about 60 years ago as a young one in the 50s, where racism was big and I was too young to basically understand it. White light passing through a prism. It doesn't matter where you were born. South Jamaica was well mixed in the 50s. But in my kindergarten photo, I stood out like a slice of white bread and a pumpernickel loaf. But I didn't feel indifferent. I made friends, shooting marbles in the backyard, playing stickball in the street. We played Little League together, Dougie and me, for the Sufton Dodgers in Baisley Park. We were the handshake between Jackie Robinson and Pee Wee Reese. It never occurred to me that we were different. Although in a field of dreams, he played third base, and I played shortstop. In a field of ignorance, we often played alone. Thank you.
Icon. Are you done, Robert? Because that was a wonderful reading, but it was a little brief. I was wonderful, especially those last poems and your insight into how children learn things. Unfortunately, and especially when you had that a miskill, that poem about the children with the plastic guns in the water, and later it could turn into a real gun if we're so cavalier about how we train people to use guns. And I also love that final poem of yours about your friend in childhood and how that moment was so sacred and not really, caught up with the racism around you. It was a beautiful poem.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really loved all the poems. I can go back through them all, but time is a wasting, I think, as they say.
Okay.
I'm going to read a few of my own here now. And I'm going to start with two Shelter Island poems. You don't want to hear any more about me, so I won't go into any more detail, but some strange types seem to gravitate to Shelter Island, present company accepted. So this poem is, Was It My Mask? To the IGA for coffee, I don a mask. Few are masked in the store, but I am old, uncertain of my immunity. A man passes by and I note his gracile body type, dancer or rock climber. He ballets pleasantly down an aisle. I find my brand and look for a special tea, but the store has not restocked it. I'm at the checkout and he is ahead of me. He looks at my coffee and I wonder if he has forgotten what he came for. He waits. I grab pistachios for a whim purchase. I place the pistachios next to the coffee and the man tells the cashier to put all on his bill. I'm paying it forward, he says. Someone did it for me. I ask, jesting, do I look homeless? He laughs. His name, David. Well, David, thanks for the surprise. In my leopard mask, I'm looking at a man in his 40s, a man graceful as a cat and as reckless. He is a gambler, and I might be his lady luck. I wonder, did he feel my leopard eyes on him when he glided under my intense appraise? First Shelter Island poem. This I wrote it about 21 years ago, but it fits in with what's going on at Shelter Island right now. And Robert, you'd be interested. They're trying to catalog and protect the turtles on the island. And here is a poem called A Blessing. Clearing a small corner, too wild, of my wooded acre, intending to eradicate tree-killing bittersweet, cat briars, creeping honeysuckle stranglers, thickets of berries, and restore a woodland, I have my husband cut with electric sweeps. He deveils a nest of blue eggs, woven into blackberries. I regret my haste. The electric tool is hated. We wait for a mother bird. Next morning, eggs are no more, nest shredded by claws. I have men coming to finish the area. With a small dozer, what other havoc will I cause? I remember our visiting turtle with scalloped edge plastron, but cannot find her on damp earth. The dozer arrives, rumbles all errant growth into flatness. Everything is scooped and carted. I have a new clearing for dreams. I see spruce and flowering kuza, a gazebo overlooking a spring, red maple wildflowers, daffodils Wordsworthian at the margin. All this I place on graph paper, a plan for the nursery and years. I glance off the porch at a bird flying low to a stone bath, and there, under the wet stone, is the turtle in red-eyed splendor, ancient form, clever design, and safe. Vines still invading the woods, I clear by hand, but I leave canes of wineberry for birds to come, mushroomed litter for the ancient one. In this poem, I think many people understand. Outliving your appliances. The drop-in stove no longer available, thus to replace requires removing one cabinet, perhaps more, facelift for a kitchen about half as old as you. The dishwasher is leaking and past its warranty, no matter how still shiny the stainless exterior. The rot and rust erode one corner lip. The video camera may not work with the new computer, which you are still learning to use, and you have yet to get the high eights transferred to DVDs. You looked up on the washing machine. During COVID, a masked man repaired the stalled machine while still under warranty. Clean sheets, clean masks. At night, you listen to the refrigerator, hoping it keeps humming. And the phone at once for a month, thanks to PSEGLI, keeps contact with the entropic world. You do not want a new stove, just this one repaired, but it would need removal, overhaul, fabricated parts, a bespoke proposition, one you cannot afford. And we have not gotten to the superstructure overall. The house itself, there seems to be some mold, leaks, I suppose, and no money for reconstruction. Aging is not a sometimes thing, but it is hit and miss, hitting mostly when least expected or desired, and not missing a trick in getting under your skin. And now I'm going to read a poem from Domino Transition so that the reporter is correct. And this is my tribute to Emily Dickinson. Her herbarium. Electronic pages turning at my finger glide reproduce Emily's own herbarium, where she immured with precision water lilies, cowslips, roses under her handwritten paper cups with a loving botanist brain. How did she dry and press so flat the heavy peony, the filmy vetch? How did she put her dears away? Her own dress, so pressed, flat and white, held her apart from passerby. Her austere room, no hint of life, the color of her soul, ivory. While in her tiny hand-sewn books, the living flower of her being skipped and danced with crimson petal, juggling brains and anguish as toys. She gardened at night with owls, her immured self in deep pages split, her tissues split, splayed, dried for art. Sorry about that little gaffe there at the end. And I know I read this poem last year, but I'm going to read it to close my poems again, because Sunday is Father's Day, and it's the time of year we do record very special events. Father's drum. My father ran into the backyard, banging a pot with a spoon. He was in a white shirt. He was jumping up and down. I stood tiptoe at the window. He danced and cried out to the trees. History came to me in joyful din. The war is over. The war is over. And I should tell you that I have been published elsewhere too. And one of the best things I ever got published in was Poets for Paris. I think some of you also were in that book. That was a wonderful book that came out a few years ago. And now I'm going to turn to the second part of the program. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Richard Varney, who became a dear friend. In 2016, I retired from teaching, and I heard about the Art Barnard Poetry Roundtable at the Shelter Island Library. I thought it was a workshop, a poetry workshop. And I went to it, and I realized it was a poetry appreciation group. And one of the people I met there was Richard Varney. And he was amazing. I knew he was a genius, but he was without pretensions. He would talk to anybody about the books he loved. And I only found out later that he went to Harvard, but obviously it makes sense. And that he was on the Harvard Poetry Review when he was there. He did not write poetry, as far as I know, but he appreciated it. He was the ideal audience. And he thought poetry the highest art. He thought poetry took the wisdom of human beings, the experience of humanity, and all of the best philosophy of the world, and concentrated in beautiful language. Isn't that true of poetry? Of course. And he loved poetry, and he loved talking about it. And he loved Robert Lowell, he loved Auden, he loved Richard Wilbur. I think there was very few people he didn't want to read about and love. And I was entranced by him. And we were planning to relaunch the Poetry Roundtable after a winter where not many people were attending, because a lot of times Shelter Island people go south. I don't know why, to Florida. They disappear. And he and I were planning to relaunch it. And I was rather surprised when he said to me in early May of 2018, Virginia, why don't you take it over for a while after we had made all these plans? I thought that was very odd because he had done all the planning with me. And we had talked also about tone in letter writing, about writing to people we had not seen in a while. Well, it all came together the next week when we all received a letter from him telling us he was going into hospice. He was only 56 and he was going into hospice. And a number of us, including Martin Anbinder and Yvette Jansen and Pat Lukens, we all went to visit him in Quogue at a hospice there. And you know, it was so normal. I remember I bought him a dream catcher, the foolish romantic things you do as if you're going to stave off death, but I couldn't believe he would die. We were talking to him outside, and the Ann Binders and Yvette Jansen had just gotten a little puppy, Heracles, and she walked him around the back because we didn't want to leave him in the car. And he came around and he went right up to Rich, who was sitting in the chair. And Rich leaned over and kind of patted the puppy. The puppy licked him. It was a moment, a miraculous moment where Rich became a little boy again, and the puppy and he were in, to me, it's like a moment in the amber of time. I'm going to remember it forever. It was perfect. It was happy. It was beautiful. And we said to Rich, we'll be right back after Memorial Day. We'll see you then. Well, of course, he died over the Memorial Day weekend. And in August of that year, 2018, his friends from Harvard and his friends from Shelter Island got together and had a little memorial service at the library for him. But we also, his friend, Sean Notaro, put the idea together to have the poetry collection. And that's when we started it. And it's grown ever since. And as I said, I just made a donation. And it's a beautiful collection at the library. And I hope all the people that are listening now do look into it. But now we're going to hear from our poets on the choices they made from the collection of what to read. And each poet has been instructed by me to read for 7 minutes from the poets they have chosen. And I'm going to turn to Kathy again and ask her what she's going to read to us, or just let her start to read.
So here I have 2 poems by John Dryden. The first one's called Happy the Man. Happy the man and happy he alone, he who can call today his own, he who secure within can say, tomorrow do thy worst, for I have lived today. Be fair or foul, or rain or shine, the joys I have possessed in spite of fate are mine. Not heaven itself upon the past has power, but what has been, and I have had my hour. I thought that was wonderful. And then a second poem by him as well, John Dryden. Ah, how sweet it is to love. How sweet it is to love. Ah, how gay is young desire. And what pleasing pains we prove when we first approach love's fire. Pains of love be sweeter far than all the pleasures are. Sighs which are from lovers blown do not gently heave the heart. Even the tears they shed alone cure like trickling balm their smart. Lovers, when they lose their breath, bleed away in easy death. Love and time with reverence use, treat them like a parting friend. Now the golden gifts refuse, which in youth sincere they send. For each year the price is more, and they less simply than before. Love, like spring tides full and high, swells in every youthful vein, but each tide does less supply till they quite shrink in again. If a flow and age appear, 'tis but rain, and runs not clear. The next poem is by someone who I'll tell you at the end. It's just number 8. It may not always be so, and I say that if your lips, which I have loved, should touch another's, and your dear strong fingers clutch his heart, as mine in time not far away, if one another's face your sweet hair lay in such a silence as I know, or such great writhings words as uttering overmuch, stand helplessly before the spirit at bay. If this should be, I say, if this should be you of my heart, send me a little word that I may go on to him and take his hands, saying, accept all happiness from me. Then shall I turn my face and hear one bird sing terribly afar in the lost lands. I thought that was a very heartbreaking poem, and that's by E.E. Cummings. This is another by the same, number 10. Raise the shade, will yours, dearie. Rain, wouldn't that get your goat? But we don't care, do we, dearie? We should worry about the rain. Ha, dearie, you know, I'm sorry for all the poor girls that get up, God knows when every day of their lives ain't you. Ooh, dearie, not so hard, dearie. You're killing me. I think there's an accent that goes with that poem. Not sure which one, probably Irish. This is number 40, and this really struck me because of the Ukraine situation. It's called number 40 simply, and it goes like this. Comrades die because they're told. Comrades die before they're old. Comrades aren't afraid to die. Comrades don't, and comrades won't believe in life. and death knows why. All good comrades, you can tell by their altruistic smell. Moscow pipes good comrades dance. Comrades enjoy. Sigmund Freud knows why. The hope you may mess your pants with every comrade is a bit of quite unmitigated hate, traveling in a futile groove, God knows why. And so do I, because they are afraid to love. Makes you wonder about Putin. This is a poem about Malcolm X, and it's by Gwendolyn Brooks. He was original, ragged, round, rich, robust. He had the hawkman's eye. We gasped. We saw the maleness raking out and making guttural the air and pushing us to walls. And in a soft and fundamental hour, a sorcery devout and vertical beguiled the world. He opened us, who was a key, who was a man. The next very, very short poem is by John Keats, and it's a place called Dowlish, and this is called Dowlish Fair. Over the hill and over the dale, and over the bourne to Dowlish, where gingerbread wives have a scanty sale, and gingerbread nuts are smallish. And there's a sonnet from the same man, John Keats. When I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleamed my teeming brain, before high-piled books in charactery hold like rich garners the full ripened grain. When I behold upon the night's starred face huge cloudy symbols of a high romance, and think that I may never live to trace their shadows with the magic hand of chance. And when I feel fair creatures of an hour that I shall never upon thee more, never have relish in thy fairy power of unreflecting love, then on the shore of the wide world I stand alone and think, till love and fame to nothingness do sink.
I think that is 7 minutes, I think. Did you have something else to read?
Well, if I have one more minute, I have a poem from After Calamus by Stephanie Burt.
All right.
They're sharp. They take me by surprise at the end, but here's one.
Okay.
You're the kind of rich dude who drains wetlands to put in high-end one-bedrooms. And it's no surprise you plan to demolish a holy tomb. Take it from me, though don't. I am Simonides, and I've been dead for a while. The Reverend Craggians put up a mausoleum for me, dedicated to Zeus, defender of migrants, Governor Phoenix. He's infamous now. Tore it down in order to build a tower he named for himself. Later, he prayed for forgiveness. No use.
That was very good. I like that very much. Thank you, Kathy. That was a beautiful reading, and you gave us so much. Keats and E.E. Cummings, one of my favorite, E.E. Cummings. And now I'm going to go on to Dan. And I just wanted to ask you, Kathy, just quickly, if I think of a moment, what made you, was there an overriding thing that made you choose these poems? Something that made you see those as very important?
I found them very personal and about personal relationships,
Okay.
and a lot about love, a little bit about sex. And
Okay, well, we need all that, yes.
I just enjoyed them.
All right, thank you. Now, Dan, I'm going on to you, and you have 7 minutes to read your choices, and I think you are going to read all Langston Hughes, am I correct?
Yes, these are selections from Langston Hughes. This is the collected poems of Langston Hughes. It's about 700 pages long. And I picked this up at James Wagner's dog-eared bookshop in East Northwood.
And you also said you saw a link, didn't you? We're getting an echo, a link between Hughes and Whitman.
Yes, yeah, I would describe, as you would get into the literature and you read bios of Langston Hughes, he's often referred to as the Black Walt Whitman.
Okay.
And, there was a different black, as a white kid growing up on Long Island, I had a very different perspective than a black person growing up in Missouri and in Harlem. So Langston Hughes. So 3 poems I'm going to read, and they discuss the black experience in America. And the first one is written about a World War I soldier and his dead brother. And it's called The Colored Soldier. My brother died in France, but I came back. We were just 2 colored boys, brown and black, who joined up to fight for the USA when the nation called us that mighty day. We were sent to training camp, then overseas, and me and my brother were happy as you please, thinking we were fighting for democracy's true reign, and that our dark blood would wipe away the stain of prejudice and hate and false color line, and give us the rights that are yours and mine. They told us America would know no black or white, so we marched to the front, happy to fight. Last night in a dream, my brother came to me out of the grave from over the sea, back from the acres of crosses in France, and said to me, brother, you got your chance. I hope you're making good and doing fine, because when I was living, I didn't get mine. Black boys couldn't work then anywhere like they can today. Could hardly find a job that offered decent pay. The unions bound us too, the factories too, but now we've got plenty to do. We wouldn't eat in restaurants. We couldn't eat in restaurants, had Jim Crow cars, didn't have any schools, and there were all sorts of bars. To a colored boy rising in wealth or station. But now I know that's not your situation. The world's been made safe for democracy, and no longer do we have the dark misery of being held back, of having no chance since the colored soldiers came home from France. Didn't our government tell us things would be fine when we get through fighting over there and dying? So now I know we blacks are just like any other, because that's what I died for, isn't it, brother? And then I saw him standing there straight and tall in his soldier's uniform and all. Then his dark face smiled at me in the night. But the dream was cruel and bitter, and somehow not right. It was awful facing that boy who went to die for what I could answer him except, it's a lie. It's a lie, it's a lie, every word they said. And it's better 1,000 times you're in France dead. For here in the South, there's no vote, no right. And I'm still just a nigger in America tonight. Then I woke up and the dream was ended. But broken was the soldier's dream, too bad to be mended. And it's a good thing that all the black boys lying dead over there can't see and don't know and won't even care. Second one, so that one was written after the First World War. This is a message to President Roosevelt called Message to the President. Mr. President, kindly please, may I have a word with you? There's one thing for one long time that I've been wishing for you to do in your fireside chats on the radio. I hear you telling the world what you want them to know, and your speeches in general sound mighty fine, but there's one thing, Mr. President, that worries my mind. I hear you talking about freedom for the Finn, for the Jew, and the Czechoslovak, but you never mention us folks who are black. We're also Americans, Mr. President, and I've had enough of putting up with this Jim Crow stuff. I want the same rights other Americans have today. I want to fly a plane like any other man may. I don't like this Jim Crow Army, or this Jim Crow Navy, or this lily white Marines licking up the gravy. We're 1/10 of the nation, Mr. President, 14 million strong. If you help keep us down, you're wrong. We work and pay our taxes, our patriotism good. We try to live like decent Americans should. Then that's why, as citizens, Mr. President, we have the right to demand the next time you make a speech, take an all-out stand and make your meaning just as clear to me as you do when talking to those Englishmen across the sea. Since for land's defense, if we have to fight, we ought to be together, black and white. So what I ask, in Mr. President, is you to say no more segregation in the USA. And when you mention the Finns and the Jew and the Czechoslovak, don't forget the 14 million here who black. Such a speech, Mr. President, for me, would put a whole new meaning in democracy. So the next time you sit down to the radio, just like you lambast Hitler Give Jim Crow a blow. All I'm asking, Mr. President, is to hear you say, no more segregation in the USA. My friends, no more segregation in the USA.
Wow, and wonderfully read. Dan, thank you.
Okay.
I think I'm getting a little echo here. I don't know what's causing it. And Robert, I know you've made some interesting choices. Would you like to begin?
Sure. I mean, Richard certainly had a vast breadth of interest. So I have 5 poems of 5 different poets that I
Sure.
selected. The first one by Pablo Neruda uses the images of nature to demonstrate love and the end of a relationship. And it's titled Vastness of Pine's Love, poem number 3. Ah, vastness of pines, murmur of waves breaking, slow to play on lights, solitary bell, twilight falling in your eyes. Toydens. If you the river sings, and my soul flees in them as you desire, and you scent it where you will, aim my road on your bow of hope, and in a frenzy I will free my flock of arrows. On all sides I see your waste of fog, and your silence hunts down my afflicted hours. My kisses anchor, and my moist desire rests in you with your arms of transparent stone. Ah, your mysterious voice that love tolls and darkens in the resonant and dying evening. Thus in deep hours I have seen over the fields the ears of wheat tolling in the mouth of the wind. The second one is by Galway Kinnell, and it's a metaphoric relationship between his attraction to blackberries and his appetite for words. The blackberry eating. I love to go out in late September among the fat, overripe, icy black blackberries to eat blackberries for breakfast. The stalks very prickly, the penalty they earned for knowing the black art of blackberry making. And as I stand among them, lifting the stalks to my mouth, the ripest berries fall almost unbidden to my tongue, as words sometimes do, certain peculiar words like strengths and squinched, many lettered one-syllable lumps, which I squeeze, squinch open, and splurge well in silent, startled, icy black language of blackberry eating in September. I also picked a poem from Langston Hughes, the one that's referenced to I Hear America Singing, emphasizing racism as it's experienced by a Black man. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me out to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. The next one is about resilience when confronting change, and it's by Renia Maria Rilke from the Sonnets of Orpheus, and it's titled Book 2, number 29. Silent friend of those far away, sense how your breath expands space. Amidst the beams of gloomy belfry, let yourself toll. It is the succumbence who feeds on your sustenance. Enter and exit in your metamorphosis. If your experiences have been painful and drinking them has been bitter, turn them into wine. In this night of excess, be magically empowered at this crossroads of your feelings and become the meaning of this straight conjoining. And if what is of earth forgets you, say to that earth of silence, I flow. Say to the rushing waters, I am. And the last one I'm going to read by John Berryman, which I really found, I like John Berryman, and many people do not because of some of the way he writes poetry. It's not the best form, English, whatever. This poem is about identifying with the reunification with his father who committed suicide and his fear that he might do so himself. And in fact, he does. This book, though, Dream Songs, was by one of the groundbreaking books of the 20th century by the Academy of American Poets. And he was the 1965 Pulitzer Prize winner for poetry. So I found it odd that not people like him, and funny and great that Richard did. So this Dream Song 76, Henry's Confession, and I will speak the way it was written in a Black man's accent. Nothing very bad happened to me lately. How do you explain that? I explain that, Mr. Bones, term of you baffling old sobriety. Sober as a man can get, no girls, no telephone. What could happen bad to Mr. Bones? If life is a handkerchief sandwich in a modesty of death, I join my father who dared so long agone leave me. A bullet on a concrete stoop, close by a smothering southern sea, spread eagled on an island by my knees. You is from hunger, Mr. Bones. I offers you this handkerchief. Now set your left foot by my right foot, shoulder to shoulder, all that jazz, arm in arm by the beautiful sea. Hum a little, Mr. Bones. I saw nobody coming, so I went instead. Thank you.
I have to tell you, Robert, that Richard Varney loved Berryman. So, and I'm not sure it was that poem, but he brought in quite a few. Well, Richard, that was a wonderful, Robert, I'm sorry. That was a wonderful, wonderful reading. I'm reversing names here. And I hope there's time for me to read a few. I know we're kind of running out of time, but I did pick some from the collection. And one of my favorite poems of all time is John Donne, and a pastor and a man of God, and also a person who lived in a very secular world. And he took very holy imagery and applied it to secular love. And it was T.S. Eliot in the 20th century who made us read Donne again. He got us interested in Donne again. This is called The Canonization, and it's by John Donne, the 17th century poet. For God's sakes, hold your tongue and let me love, or chide my palsy or my gout, my 5 gray hairs or ruined fortune flout. With wealth, your state, your mind, with arts improve, take you a course, get you a place, observe his honor or his grace, or the king's reel or his stamped face, contemplate what you will approve, so you will let me love. Alas, alas, who's injured by my love? What merchant ships have my sighs drowned? Who says my tears have overflowed his ground? When did my colds a forward spring remove? When did the heats which my veins fill add one more to the plaguey bill? Soldiers find wars, and lawyers find out still litigious men, which quarrels move, though she and I do love. Call us what you will, we are made such by love. Call her one, me another fly, we're tapers too, and our own cost die. And we and us find the eagle and the dove. The phoenix riddle hath more wit by us, we two being one are it. So to one neutral thing both sexes fit. We die and rise the same, and prove mysterious by this love. We can die by it, if not live by love. And if unfit but tombs and hearse, our legend be, it will be fit for verse. And if no piece of chronicle we prove, we'll build in sonnets pretty rooms. As well, a well-wrought urn becomes the greatest ashes or half-acre tombs. And by these hymns, all shall approve us canonized by love, and thus invoke us. You, whom reverend love made one another's hermitage, you to whom love was peace and now is rage, who did the whole world's soul contract and drove into the glasses of your eyes, so made such mirrors and such spies that they did all to you epitomize. Countries, towns, courts, big from above, a pattern of your love. And I tried to be very light tonight in my own poetry and my own choices, because the world tends to be very dark lately. But I'm going to read you this poem by Thomas Hardy, which is dark and yet hopeful. The Darkling Thrush by Thomas Hardy. I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre gray, and winter's dregs made desolate the weakening eye of day. The tangled vine stems scored the sky like strings of broken lyres, and all mankind that haunted nigh had sought their household fires. The land-sharp features seemed to be the centuries' corpse outleant, his crypt the cloudy canopy, the wind his death lament. The ancient pulse of germ and birth was shrunken hard and dry, and every spirit upon earth seemed feverless as I. At once, a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead, in full-hearted evening song of joy illimited. An aged thrush, frail, gaunt, and small, in blast beruffled plumes, had chosen thus to fling his soul upon the growing gloom. So little cause for carolings of such ecstatic sound was written on terrestrial things afar or nigh around, that I could think there trembled through his happy good night air some blessed hope, whereof he knew, and I was unaware. I also have a poem by Gwendolyn Brooks. I got to meet her, a remarkable woman. I wish this poem were taught in grade school and middle school, and high school too. We Real Cool by Gwendolyn Brooks. The pool players, 7 at the Golden Shovel. We real cool, we left school, we lurk late, we strike straight, we sing sin, we thin gin, we jazz June, we die soon. And my final poem is by Diane Ackerman, a poet that I don't think that many people know about. She's brilliant and wonderful, and of course writes about the environment and learned how to fly a plane and a deep sea dive. She does all these, she cracks every ceiling around. She's a marvelous person. And she's always interested in the mind and science. And I find this poem amazing. This is called Cranial Sacral by Diane Ackerman. And see how she takes you so many places. Visions seep under closed eyelids, a film velvet silent framed by ocean. Dawn showering gold leaf on the waves, paving a sun street to the horizon, peering into sea glass paperweight at silver plated moonfish, glinting blades, standing inside a huge wave's open whirl until it bashes beach in foam, flamenco, flying low and fast over seal streak lagoons, then looking scimitar beachscapes, cantilevered coast, quick flip, flying under the earth's bare skin, then looking up a shudder from a grave. My stomach grunts. Africa appears, a hippo made the sound at water's edge. My cheeks, a tribesman's raisin brown, echo the hills and mutate back to bone. Beside myself, I view my skeleton as artifact, then cadaverous fright, cutting a perfect V through water. My body is all fiberglass, flinging wake. A high creek spumes falling in slow motion, while just as slowly I grow to meet it. An agitated ocean full of bounce, its wave tips whip to blue meringue. As her hands support my head and coccyx, I'm myself as a baby held aloft. In dizzy arcs of shine, scent, and sound, world without words, beginning to end. Now I'm just going to go around once more and ask Robert, with all this in the air, any thoughts?
I tell you that I think it's wonderful when different poets get together. When they read their own stuff, you get the opportunity to have many different voices. Nobody's really better than the other. We're different is how I look at it. And it's just as it's warm and welcoming that there are ears out there that are favorable to the differences in the voices. And I just love it. This was nice. Thank you.
Oh, good, Robert. And Dan, any thoughts about the whole evening?
Well, Virginia, we both, a lot of us here are impacted by our experience in Catholic school, and the nuns always say,
Yes, I was going to say, this seems to be a Catholic night for some reason.
you could judge people by the quality of their companions. So as I look at the screen here and I see you and Robert and I see Kathy and all the good folks from Shelter Island, I think the nuns are smiling somewhere.
Oh, how nice. That's a lovely thought. Kathy, any thoughts in conclusion, as we all read and the sounds of these wonderful words are still in our minds?
Kathy,
I think you have to put your mic on. Is your
Sorry.
mic off, Kathy?
I'm good now. Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. First of all, thank you for turning me on to this library on Shelter Island and its collection. If I take a trip out there, I'll know where to head straight to.
It's a lovely little library, and there are wonderful librarians in it who help you all the time. It really is great. There's Terry. Yes, Terry. And Terry recorded us and you'll be able to get this as a recording for those friends who missed it, who couldn't be here tonight. And I think we only went a little bit, well, we did go over our time, but I hope no one minded because the air was filled with beautiful language. And I think Richard Varney would have been delighted, as we are delighted with all of you and everything you did. And Terry, thank you so much. And thanks to Jocelyn, who couldn't be here. I know she's a little under the weather. I hope
Yes.
I didn't send her there by all my questions and everything.
I will
And
send.
I want to
send-
thank all the audience that came, the Art Rich Poetry Roundtable, the people from Up Island, Off Island, On Island, California, Vermont, whoever was here tonight. I thank you so much. And there's going to be another poetry event in September 24th. It's a Saturday at 5. You'll learn more about that if you consult the library newsletter. And I'm sure Terry will let you know about it. And I
will.
bid you all adieu. And I think Terry's going to take us out of here. And again, Dan, Robert, and Kathy, thank you so much for your help for tonight. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank
all.
you all. It was just wonderful to sit here and listen, and the poetry of all types was beautiful. So I want to thank you all for doing this. We have recorded this. It'll be on our YouTube channel probably tomorrow or the next day. And we have a lot of thank yous in our chat down here.
Yes, I
saying
see that
thank
coming in
you.
the chat
So,
room. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I think our audience.
And I
really
apologize to
honors you.
everyone for the few snafus. I kept having problems looking down and losing my line. I
It
think
was
I need
wonderful.
glasses.
All right. Well, good night, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. And
Yes, it was
again, thank you
wonderful.
to everybody
Yes.
for your wonderful words tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye. Good night, everyone. Good night.
Night all.